American farmer. And that leads into a report I'm going to start now about food, because just a couple of weeks ago, the government put out a brace of documents about food, which are designed to give the impression that there is a central plan to improve the health of the nation at the same time as improving economic conditions for food producers and deriving a restored environment from the process. Labour's so-called plan for change is deployed yet again to make it sound like the pursuit or achievement of any of these things is both a novel idea and indeed within the gift of the government to give. Now, this is a crucial point because the good food cycle shown here refers to the, quote, amazing businesses, end quote, making this happen. And of course, the reality is that the big food and big agricultural businesses are able to drive the agenda, partly due to their corporate strength and lobbying power, but also because the government schemes, policies and subsidies are all designed to favour them above others. Now, the food strategy document put out on the same day makes the same sort of woolly claims, suggesting that food security and national security are inextricably linked. Now, that may well be the case, but as reported many times, the recent publication of the National Security Strategy, the Strategic Defence Review, as well as last year's Just in Case report for the National Preparedness Commission, demonstrates beyond all reasonable doubt that the UK is not in any way prepared for any of the types of shocks that it describes in any of these documents. Now, before going into more detail, there are two things to point out. Firstly, the term food security, which is bandied around all the time, only occurs 3 times on the statute book and never in a binding sense. It's only ever written down as a consideration when evaluating environmental schemes. And I think that makes the priorities here very clear. Secondly, the budget for agriculture in the UK this year, which has been described as the largest ever, is £5 billion. Now, it would take the National Health Service just 10 days to spend this much money. So I think you can decide whether you think the government is actually sincere on this issue. As to the content, it's been pointed out by many, including Farmers Weekly, that this plan does not involve animals. And having read the document, that is really the case. There are precisely 0 mentions of dairy or meat, but instead a reshaping of a diet in order that we all eat the same thing, regardless of the vast quantities of evidence suggesting that animals benefit the environment and, of course, that animal products are in fact vital for human health. The anti-nature agenda is covered on all sides, as evidenced by one of the latest emergencies. But to just draw out from the document, they're suggesting that we have the foundations of the economy at heart with this new food strategy, and that our diet should be higher in fruit, vegetables and whole grains, and of course that it supports our net zero commitments. But on the subject of emergencies, we are dealing yet again with blue tongue, or at least in this instance, and I've covered it many times, but just a reminder that the restrictions on movement are, of course, specifically crafted in order to encourage vaccination, even though, and as usual, the vaccines in question were given under emergency authorization. And it should also be pointed out that the people investing in fake meat grown in laboratories are exactly the same people investing in pharmaceutical products for animals, and further, that the volume of these products that goes to animals far outstrips that to humans. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious what the direction of travel is. Now, the other big issue, which of course will not go away, is population. And as recent statistics from the ONS suggest, and they are only estimates, but the natural population, as you can see on screen, dipping down relatively sharply to the right, whereas the migrant population is surging upwards with a estimated net inflow of nearly 700,000 for the previous year. So considering these factors, how the land is used could not really be more important. And I cite here the consultation live at the moment called Multifunctional Land Use. And they say that there's going to be a document produced from this consultation in October of this year. They cite the Royal Society's 2023 Multifunctional Land Use document, which reckons on, quote, an additional 4.4 million hectares of land, which is 18% of the total landmass of the UK, being needed to deliver net zero biodiversity and development objectives by 2050. So we're about to chime in with a...
Well, I was just going to ask you, Charles, with this food security agenda, how does that square with paying farmers not to grow food and the rewilding schemes that the government has been undertaking for the last decade?
Absolutely.
How do those two things...
Well,
Are they
Patrick,
compatible?
I mean, neither you nor I works for the government, so we couldn't possibly comprehend such a thing. Exactly. This is the central question. And to qualify exactly what you're asking and what people will be thinking, what's called the utilised agricultural area in the UK is just under 17 million hectares. And so the croppable, what's described as the croppable area of that is around 6 million hectares. I've just had that confirmed by DEFRA this morning. And the area covered by arable crops from last year's statistics is not quite as large as the Royal Society is suggesting. And don't forget that the word they used was additional. So basically what they're saying is that there will be, were this to be rolled out and were croppable area to be used, which I know is a hypothetical, but that would leave precisely no land left upon which to produce crops in the way that they are now. Now, I don't mean that to sound alarmist, of course. But of course, worth pointing out also that DEFRA has delayed the publication of this year's statistics on land use. But last year, there was a 107% increase in uncropped arable land as a direct result of the unlimited offering from the sustainable farming incentive. So it could well turn out to be the case that a lot less land is actually in production this year. Now, the answer for the countryside, as far as the government appears to be concerned, is to destroy it. And to pick out one example, we'll look at the way in which lithium battery technology has been deployed across the country. This is the mapping from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. And first, we're looking at the figures as they were from 1990 with no developments in existence. Now, they're deemed hazardous by virtue of the fact they're unproven and that in the event of fire or an explosion, nothing can be done to mitigate, leading to a real environmental catastrophe. But this is what the map now looks like today. And indeed, the last image includes the proposed sites. If you're unable to see the screen, I've got a map of the UK with hotspots shown all over the place, with only exceptions really for Mid Wales, the Highlands of Scotland, and the Pennine area. So to reinforce the point about the sheer recklessness of doing this, I would point to the recent statement from Matson Shipping, a large logistics company based in Hawaii, which has said in a statement that due to increasing concern for the safety of transporting vehicles powered by large lithium-ion batteries, Matson is suspending acceptance of used or new electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles for transport aboard its vessels. Now, that's the end of the quote from that statement. I would say this really can't be brushed off. It's not a conspiracy theory. And this is at a time when, as reported on Wednesday, the government is now spending your money to subsidise the purchase of those very vehicles. So there's loads more to go into in terms of detail. And of course, we set it alongside the the ONS statistics that nearly 7,000 farming businesses are reported to have closed down in the year that we're currently in.
And on that blue tongue issue, I was speaking with an organic farmer, local in Devon, that specializes in livestock, and they try to stay organic. But if the government says there's blue tongue in the area, they have to vaccinate their animals, otherwise they get the risk of being shut down.
Exactly.
So that's what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Yep.
So even though they want to stay organic and they don't vaccinate their animals, the blue tongue scare has opened the door for government to lean on. And I obviously I don't want to say the name of the farmer, but this is the conversation that's happening on the countryside.
No, the pressure is intense, and it is in effect they're rolling out now exactly what they tried to do with human beings during the COVID period, which was to say that there can be free movement on the condition that everybody has received a pharmaceutical product. And it's exactly what they've done. So the blue tongue restriction zone has been expanded to cover the whole of the UK, which means that free movement has in effect been granted, but under those very conditions. You're absolutely right. Now, what I would say in terms of, as a member of the audience, your relationship and with regard to food and all the rest of it is that the farming section on the UK Column website is absolutely full of interviews with people who have a vision, but that's founded on reality and a way to achieve what the government pretends to be doing, but without destroying anything in the process. So that concludes the food sort of report for today. And we're now going to go back to Mark, because